Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. In today's Views on News, we're going to talk about two very important developments. Pressure by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the State Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar, a hard-hitting presser clearly exposing Indian face of terrorism. We'll be talking about this in detail. And the second topic we'll be discussing today is related to a successful visit Tajikistan's President, Mr. Emomali Rahmon, had in Pakistan. He's undertaking two-day official visit to Pakistan on the invitation of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Let's talk about the first topic, a hard-hitting presser by Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar, hard-hitting presser exposing completely Indian face of terrorism. Let me quote her. She said that India's objective was to undermine Pakistan's peace and security through terrorism, and no country had used terrorism better than India. She went on to say, we are at a unique place where perpetrators of terrorism are projecting themselves to be the greatest victim. She also said when there was undeniable, indisputable evidence, it was necessary to call a spade a spade. She said that India was frustrated on Pakistan's exit from the FATF's grey list, and she called upon the international community, particularly the United Nations and the FATF, to hold India accountable. Now, this particular presser, very important presser and significant presser, comes a day after another very important and a significant presser by Interior Minister Rana Sanaullah, in which he said India is involved in all sorts of terrorism in Pakistan, and its activities had gone beyond that of an enemy state. He said that Johor town blast in Lahore last year was masterminded, planned and executed by Indian nationals who were holding Indian passports. Since India has been caught red-handed for the proxies and the terrorist activities it is carrying out in Pakistan to destabilize Pakistan. Pakistan has got the indisputable evidence, and the dossier regarding this has been shared with the diplomatic corps in Islamabad, with the members of the United Nations Security Council, and this dossier will be shared with the United Nations Secretary General as well. Now, after this, what happens to be the responsibility of the international community, particularly when we talk about the international organizations that were meant, and the purposes and the principle of which clearly state the Charter of the United Nations, that it was formed to ensure peace and security in the world. So what happens to be the responsibility of the United Nations in particular, and also the Financial Action Task Force? How can Financial Action Task Force hold India accountable for its terrorist activities to destabilize its neighboring countries, especially Pakistan? And to look into it, we've been joined in the studio by Air Vice Marshal retired Mr. Ijaz Malik. He's a senior analyst. Mr. Malik, thank you very much once again for being on Views on News. We really appreciate your time. And also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Amna Mehmood. She is expert foreign affairs. Dr. Amna, thank you very much for your time, for being on Views on News also. And at the same time, on Skype, we are being joined from South Africa by Mr. Najm Saqib, his former ambassador. Mr. Saqib, thank you very much for your time at Views on News tonight. I really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Saqib. Now, indisputable evidence. Once again, Indian hands have been found in the terrorist and subversive activities in Pakistan. They are involved in spilling the blood of innocent citizens in Pakistan, trying to destabilize it and its economy at the same time. Now, don't you think it happens to be a huge blot on the so-called largest democracy that is known the world over as India?
Not only it is a black scar on the forehead of New Delhi, it is a fact of life also. We have proved it before also. If you remember, the DGISPR and the former foreign minister, they sat together in a similar presser, and they presented a dossier not only to the world, to the diplomatic community, to the United Nations, to all the committees of the United Nations dealing with the subject. Now, This was a timely presser by Hina Rabbani Khar, I must say. Because normally the Foreign Office spokesperson comes and states certain thing, issues a statement, and the matter finishes. It seems that the government of Pakistan has taken, a serious note of this, especially the last year's Johor town, Lahore terrorist attack, and with facts and figures they have presented it. Two or three main points of the presser actually explain the intent of the government of Pakistan for the international community to take cognizance of India's state terrorism. State terrorism. And when we say state terrorism, then it becomes a serious issue, because there could be some, rogue elements in a country which are doing, certain undesirable actions. But if a state is involved in terrorist activities, then it becomes extremely serious. And that is why a plea to the United Nations and FATF, as you have said. One of the most important things that Hina Rabbani Khar, alluded to was that no country in the world has used terrorism better than India. This is something new. The rest of the, press conference, being aware of the talking points on the subject, I can tell you that this was the main thing, that India has been trying to portray Pakistan and some other elements in the region that they are involved in terrorist activities, and India is the victim. Now, this point must be highlighted not only at the Foreign Office and by the Foreign Secretary or by the Foreign Minister and Minister of State. It should be disseminated to all our missions abroad. All our ambassadors should repeat all these points, that India is involved in state terrorism and why Pakistan is bothered about it. Why Pakistan should be showing the real face of this largest democracy of the world, because it affects directly Pakistan, and we have proofs, we have evidence that India is actually involved in terrorist activities to destabilize Pakistan. These are very, very serious and important matters, and I think this presser will go a long way in telling the world again. By the way, the world also, already knows about it. The world has seen the Indian EU disinfo lab, all that saga. We presented a dossier before. We are presenting a second dossier now. Our efforts should not, discontinue just because India is not responding or the international community is responding. It is not responding. So I think it was a timely presser. The points were made very clearly and rightly so. And let us see what the international community now, particularly the relevant committees of the United Nations, let's see how they take cognizance of this.
Right, Mr. Najm, Saqib, your point is well taken. I'll come back to you with this particular thing. What happens to the responsibility of the international organizations and the international community at this point in time? As you have already mentioned, that happens to be a matter of grave concern when a state itself is involved in the terrorist and subversive activities. Now, Mr. Malik, as the minister herself in this presser today had said that no country had used terrorism better than India for its political gains, as well as when it is using terrorism for its political gains, much better than any country in the world. At the same time, it is projecting itself as the victim of terrorism. So quite a duplicity. How do you think India has been able to hoodwink the international community on this matter?
I think this is a very well phrased statement by the State Minister. Indian involvement, we had proof as far as back in '96 at Lahore airport blast, killing 9 and injuring 20 people. A person, the main suspect, was caught from a border village, and he confessed that who was the handler of that attack, that he was sponsored and trained by India. Then Easter attack in Lahore, Gulshan Iqbal Park. Then Commander Yadav's confessions. I mean, all these things we have sent and presented, as Ambassador Saqib said, a dossier already to the international community. But what happened, that India, despite having done all these things, they have been very successful in their perception and media management about Pakistan, where after having sacrificed enormous amount of economic losses, over 75,000 deaths in war on terror, still Pakistan was.
But their disinformation campaign, or the misinformation campaign, has already been busted out, as Mr. Saqib already mentioned, the busting of the EU Disinfo Lab. So how do you think their propaganda machinery?
The question is, did that achieve the desired results in favor of Pakistan, and did that clarify Pakistan's position? No, because Indian diplomacy, Indian outreach in the powerful lobbies, the influential lobbies, particularly in Washington and Europe, they managed to convey their point of view. And I think we must pursue our point of view, which is nothing but a ground reality, at least if it doesn't solve the problem.
There was another mention by the minister in the press today. I'm making the United Nations Security Council presidents to talk about terrorism on the basis of the imaginary sources. I mean, if there are imaginary sources and Indian diplomats or their outreach, if that is able to convince the international community, so there must be a need for the introspection when it comes to the role of international community in understanding the matter, what exactly is happening on the ground.
You just see, very recently, OIC Secretary General visited, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and today we have a rebuttal in Indian Express and other newspapers that they said that OIC has no business. OIC is, giving a statement taking sides with Pakistan. This is the same OIC where, in the session in UAE, being a non-Muslim country, India was very proud to be an observer there. So whatever suits them, they avail. In my humble opinion, we must project it at every forum that a country which is trying to seek membership of United Nations Security Council, what that country is doing to her own people in occupied Kashmir, and what it's doing with the neighbor. India is the only country in the region which has issues with all her neighbors. It's not only Pakistan. So that needs to be highlighted, and that needs to be highlighted at every forum.
Dr. Amna, Pakistan has been highlighting what Indian state terrorism had been doing, especially to the neighboring countries, especially in Pakistan. Now, why do you think Pakistan's continuous appraisal regarding this to the international community has most of the time apparently seemed to have fallen the deaf ears, and there hasn't been any concrete action when it comes to the role and the responsibility of that particular major organ of the United Nations that we call the United Nations Security Council? It has the mandate to punish and penalize the aggressor or the rogue state.
Yeah, of course, they have this mandate, but you see that ABM mentioned just that we don't have any follow-up. When the record was exposed that what they are doing by the European Union itself, and it was to be followed by Pakistan with the full zeal, and it was to be exposed everywhere, and that should be taken to all international forums as well, that they are claiming something else and they have been exposed by some neutral agency, not because India and Pakistan are the party to the dispute of Kashmir, but European Union is not. So when they expose that, we should take that matter to but we have been doing to some extent. We don't have that much active diplomacy.
Right,
that
Dr.
is
Amna,
required.
there was a statement by the minister herself in today's presser. She said, let me quote, "We do not, unlike our neighbors, go to the next day and blame one country or the other. We waited till we had strong, hard evidence to be making the case we are making today." So that, I think, very much clears the point
Yes,
that
and this is
two are making here.
Statement like a very responsible state as Pakistan is, that we don't go anywhere without evidence,
Right.
and that too hard and fast proven evidences that can prove Pakistan's case. And we took 1 year to take that dossier, to make that dossier and present it to international community. But I think even with that, we have to be very active with our diaspora. They have to be very active to propagate and to expose Indian designs in international media sitting there. They should be very active, and Pakistan government should support them in a way. As you know, once I quoted that India has planned very well to control international media in a way that they provided lot of scholarships to their media persons, like the students when they were in university. And you know, in universities, next policy makers are sitting. They would be policy makers. They would be active in field in 2 years. So they were trained with them, and they joined media themselves, and all their friends and colleagues are sitting in other media houses. So that is very effective strategy to place your people in media, in an international media. Then you don't have to work hard. They will always speak Indian mind.
Right. Mr. Najm Saqib, as a former ambassador, what do you think, what more needs to be done when it comes to Pakistani authorities building its case in front of the international community more forcefully? We have seen the Pakistani authorities have been doing their best and presenting the indisputable evidence. And this statement that I have already mentioned by Minister said that we do not, unlike our neighbors, go next day and blame one country or the other. We waited till we had strong hard evidence to be making the case we are making today.
I think we need to address an inherent paradox in our policy. As has been said here, that we need some lobbyists to actually promote and project Pakistan's case, and if we have a hard core evidence, why can't we prove it to the international community? The problem here is twofold. One is that if, let's say, Pakistan hires some lobbyist firm in the United States or in UK or anywhere in Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, wherever, there are scandals which come, to the fore that, look, Pakistan has paid so many $1 million or so many thousands of dollars to so-and-so lobbyist company. Now, we have to stop this. We have to see the real intent, because these two are paradoxical. If you want to do something, present the case to the international community, you need some lobbyists. Your missions abroad, your embassies, your high commissions, your consulates, they are not enough. And whenever they speak the language of the government of Pakistan. You need somebody neutral, and that is where the role of lobbyists. Now, please, we should understand that if you hire a lobbyist firm, it is not an illegal thing. It is being done everywhere in the world. Second, paradoxical point is that to hire lobbyists, you need money. Where do you have this money? For instance, in the last few weeks, we are hearing news that many of our embassies have not been paid their salaries, the officers, the staff, the utility bills, the electricity, water, etc. Now, this economic crunch has to be seized. This economic crunch has to be addressed immediately and forthwith. And to address that, this political uncertainty has to stop, which has marred the entire political scene of Pakistan. So, to me, we know what to do. We have, enough knowledge, especially in the Foreign Office, dealing with the entire international community, all the countries of the world. But the thing is that when it comes to paying money, either we do not pay, or we pay, we scandalize it. Number three, that we have to have, our missions abroad and our diaspora intact. So, whenever there is a policy matter, for instance, India has to be exposed. The real face of the India has to be shown to the world. Now, the embassies alone cannot do anything. Neither Foreign Office can do anything on its own. So the people of Pakistan itself, everyone who goes from Pakistan somewhere, he or she is the ambassador of Pakistan. They should know it on their fingertips what India is doing. The problem is that some of the elements inside Pakistan, they would not like this to carry on because they have some vested interest in India. India is a sworn enemy of Pakistan. We have seen it in the last over 75 years. Now the time is how to deal with it. And I think being a diplomat for many, many decades, I can assure you that if the United States of America could not find a military solution in Afghanistan after staying there 20 years, along with all NATO forces, there is no way that two countries can find a solution militarily, or just saying that we have an atomic know-how and you have an atomic know-how, an exchange of statements at the Ministry of Defense level. It has to be political. It has to be, at the diplomatic level. And to do that, we need to actually sit down with India, as we used to sit, there were foreign minister level talk, there were foreign secretary formal talks. They need to revive. Now, the problem here is that India right now, especially after the 5th of August 2019 actions and development regarding the held Kashmir, India is not in a mood to talk. That is where the actual diplomatic challenge lies. We need to bring India to the negotiating table and then discuss all these things bilaterally. For instance, if this dossier has to be presented, it can be presented to them in a meeting, in a formal meeting, with formal talking points, etc.
Right,
So
Mr.
my
Najm,
wish is,
your point is well taken. When India is not ready or willing to talk to Pakistan and hurls baseless accusations against Pakistan, while it projects itself to be the victim of terrorism, so what can be done in order to goad Indian authorities to come to the negotiating table? So there, it seems that a particular state has gone down a dark tunnel with no opening at the end.
yes, you are absolutely right. Now, the thing is, India's plate, as far as problems inside are concerned, it is already full. Held Kashmir, the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is not the only one where there is an indigenous movement against the government, in New Delhi. There are more than 25 separatist movements which are going on in India. India is imploding from inside. But that doesn't make Pakistan stronger. There also is a paradox. If India goes down, that doesn't mean Pakistan goes up. So we have to do it on two levels. One, we have to keep on exposing India's designs, these nefarious designs that Hina Rabbani Khar has mentioned. Number two, that we have to make ourselves in a position that we have a strong foreign policy. A strong foreign policy you cannot have through speeches. If through speeches Kashmir could have been won, I would have won Kashmir, long time ago. You need to be economically sound so that you have a strong foreign policy.
Right, Mr. Najm Saqib, when at this point in history, when we talk about the role of the United Nations in particular, as we go through the Charter, the purposes and the principles of the United Nations Charter, it clearly elaborates the purpose of it was to ensure global peace and security. So there must be provisions regarding how to hold such an aggressor, a rogue state such as India, accountable.
Look, the United Nations, as far as United Nations Security Council is concerned, we have the unanimously adopted, resolutions on the held Kashmir. It's a very sad state of affairs that it was a unanimously, adopted and accepted resolution that there should be a free and fair, plebiscite referendum in the held Kashmir, the whole entire area, for the people of Kashmir to decide whether they want to go with Pakistan or India. Now, the August 2019 actions actually put all these resolutions, Security Council resolutions aside, and this is what they say, that they show their adamance. That we are adamant. It is a integral part of India, and nobody can do anything. There you can say that the helplessness of the United Nations is visible, as a very stark reality. The thing is that United Nations is run by the United States of America and the European countries. And they somehow favor India in whatever happens. Why? Because they have their political designs in this region, South Asian region, particularly against China, China containment policy. India is being, a policeman in the region on behalf of the United States and the European Union, etc. So politically, it is not viable. By the way, in FATF, India is on the radar also, but the fact is that their inactions or their money laundering aspects or their all these, terrorist financing, aspects are being overlooked. So United Nations, FATF, etc., when they see it at the real level, India is a culprit. But when they see see at the political level, they try to overlook this, and this is where another challenge lies for the Pakistan, foreign policy and diplomats, that how to actually penetrate in that and tell them that, look, India is your partner, okay. India is a big economy, okay. India is the largest economy, okay. But look what it has been doing. And where are the human rights? That human rights declaration, the United Nations Security Council, the General Assembly, etc. So we should not stop our efforts in doing that, and time is not very far that India will be actually, exposed. Why? As I said, it is imploding from inside, the pressure from outside, and we will see the results.
Right, Mr. Malik, as India is imploding from inside, as the kind of discrimination which is being meted out to minorities, especially over there, and the kind of high-handedness and the unilateral and illegal actions in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, how the United Nations in particular, do you think it has the capacity to follow its charter and the concerned United Nations Security Council resolutions to start that accountability from somewhere, at least from a certain entity, for example, that is RAW, that is clearly found involved in the subversive activities?
As Ambassador Saqib highlighted, when have we seen United Nations, taking charge of any conflict or crisis since its formation? It's only when America wanted to do certain actions, those were endorsed by United Nations. And that's all. There has never been a successful conflict resolution ensured by United Nations. It was India who went to UN in 48 and resolution was passed. They were pursuing that channel, and since then they kept quiet till the time we reached another milestone of Simla agreement, and then they say that this is a bilateral issue. Then Pakistan has always been saying, requesting them at every forum to have composite dialogue to resolve all issues, including Kashmir, Sir Creek, and other disputes. But India has never responded. So I think we need to do our efforts. That should not stop us from doing our rightful efforts. And I would just like to give a brief comment about what Dr. Amna said regarding, creating in the diaspora or creating an influence there. Unfortunately, we have not made any effort. Some of the Pakistanis that I have interacted, particularly in DC, they are influential and they have personal contacts with the political elite of United States, but they do not radiate any influence as far as the cause of Pakistan or Kashmir is concerned. We have totally neglected the channels where we can help nurture our youth who are going there. First of all, we waste so many scholarships which are offered to us because of our bureaucratic problems, and secondly, are people who go there. There are a lot of youngsters
Malik,
who go in the, let's say, Fulbright scholarship.
Yeah, your point is well taken. There was a very important point which was highlighted by Minister, that when you try to harm your region, you actually end up harming yourself. Now, don't you think there is a realization, or should be a realization, among at least the saner voices over there in India, if it is trying to inflict harm to a neighboring country, it would actually be harmful for itself and the entire region as well, and for the larger progress and the prosperity and the development of the peoples in the region?
There are saner voices in India. There are writers, there are intellectuals, there are media persons, who would call, who will give or express at least a neutral opinion. But that doesn't really help the issue, because particularly with this present regime, since they have come in power, they do not listen to any sane voice. They do not. They do what exactly they want to do, and that is what they did to the status of Kashmir in August 2019. There were no voices raised in the region. There was hardly any meaningful even condemnation by any world forum. So because everybody that we interact and they see India as a billion plus population size economy. So it is only the economics which,
no matter at the stake of loss of human lives and spilling the blood of innocent souls.
This jargon of human rights and human lives, this is very selective.
But we have seen the major world powers talking about human rights very vehemently across the globe in other countries. And when it comes to human rights violations, blatant human rights violations, illegal and unilateral actions in contravention of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, the bilateral agreements, in contravention to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where that particular slogan of upholding human rights by those major world powers go, because they need to put in a full stop in order to curtail that economic might. Don't you think so?
No, today's all kind of interests, they revolve around the nucleus of economic interest, and the multinationals, they control the world and they dictate what needs to be done selectively in different regions. They change their principal stance very frequently.
Right. Dr. Amna, what's your take regarding this? Does this premise of being economically mightful hold substance when we talk about particularly the minorities, including Muslims, Dalits, a community from within Hindus, and Christians and Sikhs also? They happen to be a huge chunk in the overall population in India. If they are being so brutally meted out discrimination over there, so do you think after it is imploding, that economic might is going to be sustainable in the longer run? Don't you think this is not being seen by the major world powers?
First, I would address that imploding from inside, as Ambassador mentioned, as AVM mentioned, as you mentioned. It is a pertinent question that they are imploding from within. But at the same time, you have seen that they have maintained the economic base. They have become third largest economy of the world during the period of Mr. Modi, and before that, Mr. Manmohan Singh actually started. And during that period, India was having minority problem as well. They were treating Kashmiris very brutally, and at the same time you have seen that conflict in Himachal Pradesh is actually the reaction of people's movement there. They have differentiated statehood and their own policy towards their citizens, but we have to be quite wiser in the sense, as Avian mentioned, that there is no way except to make our house in order, make yourself attractive for others. We are a nation of 25 million, and that is not a small number. But we stand nowhere. We have nothing to sell off. We have nothing to offer to the world. We have to be very relevant. At this time, I often talk that we have only potential to export services. We are all against the brain drain. But right now, we have a largest number of youth in the world, and we can export them. They would be strong diaspora because they would be skilled, they would be educated, they would make difference, and then the world would see that they are helping us in developing. Russia is having 0 population growth rate, Europe is having less than 1. Then with that they need manpower, and Pakistan can provide that, and that diaspora Pakistani representative would make them dependent on Pakistan. Then we can make a difference. We can develop our economy like a supply chain or so. Except that there is no other way, that we have to get economic strength and we have to get political strength.
Right. Mr. Najm, Saqib, one last point, please briefly, if you would like to shed a little bit of light on the United Nations Security Council's sanctions regime, which has also been mentioned by Ms. Hina Rabbani Khar, that India had been paralyzing the UNSC sanctions regime. How do you think this particular regime, the sanctions regime, could be made effective? And does it call for a serious introspection when it comes to the role and responsibility of the United Nations Security Council?
This is not an easy task. And to go about it, you need to see what the United States of America would like to do in this respect. Unfortunately, regrettably, in the last 3-4 years, we have not been in the good books of the United States of America. We have taken a number of stances and standpoints where we have actually annoyed the only superpower of the world, who has the influence not only, as I used to say to my students, that United States of America is the neighbor of every country in the world. Unfortunately, going to Moscow on the day when Russia is invading Ukraine, and then stating that, this conspiracy theory, the regime change that the American and the Donald do and all that. And such things, for instance, attending the inaugural ceremony in China of the Beijing Olympics, when the entire American and the European Union, these countries have boycotted them. Look, if you are with China and China is a friend, that doesn't mean that America has to be an enemy. In fact, China is the first country which has been telling us for years that we have to have good relations with every country, including the United States and India. Now, coming to the crux of your question is,
there has been a thaw in the relationship between Pakistan and the United States under the incumbent government, and of course there was a brief phase of bumpy relationship after, especially the Taliban took over Afghanistan.
I would like to see that thaw that you have mentioned in reality. To me, at the moment, especially particularly after withdrawing from Afghanistan, their only interest in Pakistan is in counterterrorism, border security, and security issues. Pakistan would like to start the trade and commerce relations and reinitiate, as all of us we know, that United States of America is the largest export destination of Pakistan. Now, why they are not trying to, or why they are not up to talking to us on these important matters, because there are many other issues. For instance, Madam Hina Rabbani Khar goes to Afghanistan, talks about some new mechanisms. Fact number one, we have not acknowledged or recognized the government in Kabul, but we are still hobnobbing with them. Fact number two, America does not want Pakistan to have any kind of relationship with Taliban government. Fact number three, that none of the countries of the world has acknowledged the government in Kabul. Now, how can we take certain actions which have negative effects on our other relations? And in this particular thing, if we are trying to have good relations with Afghanistan, we have to be absolutely sure that we are not annoying China, we are not annoying Russia, and we are not annoying European Union, and to top it all, the United States of America. At the moment, we need, some economic. I would say that we have to
Mr.
have.
Najm, Saqib, beg your pardon for the interjection. I'll have to interrupt over here. We are short of time, and your point is well taken. Very enlightening discussion regarding the exposing the Indian face of terrorism. We'll be talking about another topic. Tajikistan's President, Mr. Emomali Rahmon's visit to Pakistan. He's on a 2-day official visit to Pakistan on the invitation of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Both leaders had a one-on-one meeting, and they had a joint press takeout as well, and very positive statements coming from both the leaders. As Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said, that we had positive discussions and discussed to enhance trade and investment, and we want to complete CASA 1000 as soon as possible. Similar sort of reciprocation coming from the Tajikistan's president. He says the completion of CASA 1000 was also discussed, and we want restoration of peace in Afghanistan. Pakistan, Tajikistan have same views on key international issues, and Tajikistan wants to strengthen bilateral ties with Pakistan. Mr. Malik, how significant this visit is to give a new impetus when it comes to bilateral relationship between Pakistan and Tajikistan?
This should be viewed very positively, and it should, translate into a better trade relationship to start with. Currently, the volume of trade is around 8.75 US dollars. We are exporting citrus fruit, rice to them, and in return mostly we are getting, because they have a large segment of their economy, about 40% plus is agri-based. So they are sending us the raw cotton and thyme onions. So we must expand that, continue to pursue CASA project, and explore certain areas in the services sector, which is another very important segment of their economy.
A very important agreement has been signed between Pakistan and Tajikistan, the transit trade agreement. How crucial is the regional connectivity when it comes to Pakistan enhancing its ties with Tajikistan?
Yes, I think we must, because in the larger context of CPEC, and the connectivity in the region, if we have these markets explode, I think it will be mutually beneficial for both countries.
Right, Dr. Amna, your take regarding this particular agreement of the transit trade?
Transit trade was already in progress, and we expanded ECO, at time in 90s, and we wanted to have a connectivity through Central Asian states for having more energy and making it an energy corridor. But it is all dependent on Afghanistan, the peace in Afghanistan, because that is in the way. Wuhan border, that is very complicated, and it's hard to conduct trade through that route. But it is very imperative for Central Asian states to conduct trade through Pakistan, one. Secondly, as ABM pointed out, they are mostly agricultural countries, so we are having potential to provide them value-added, products. Like somebody told me that they are importing poultry feed, and that is not a rocket science to make poultry feed in Pakistan. We can export things like that, and we can export manpower, as just mentioned.
Right, Mr. Najm Saqib, as we know, Pakistan and Tajikistan have a long-standing, cordial, friendly, and brotherly relations, and this particular visit happens to be of utmost importance and significance. A lot has been done when it comes to bilateral cooperative partnership between the two countries. What do you think, what lies ahead, in what areas both the countries can cooperate in order to strengthen this bilateral relationship?
Jawad, the thing is that although Tajikistan is the poorest country, if we talk about the Soviet sphere countries, it is the poorest. But President Emomali Rahmon is a very strong president of that country. He's there since 1992 when he was elected in 1994 as the president. Whatever he says, Tajikistan will follow. So to me, President's visit is very important and timely. And I think this transit trade agreement that you're talking about, it is not that important. What is important here is, number one, the energy corridor of, through Afghanistan we have to actually see how can we have peace in Afghanistan. And by the way, this CASA and this TAPI and all these, I have dealt with these subjects as Director General, Iran, Turkey, and Central Asia, from 2012 to 2014. So I know a little bit more about these energy things. The problem here is twofold. One, that India, if ever India is there, Pakistan is not going to, go any forward. May it be TAPI or may it be FATF or may it be United Nations. Number two, that everything depends on the condition, the political, economic, and the geographical condition, the geostrategic situation inside Afghanistan and around it. So, number three is that Tajikistan is also a victim of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan. In 2018, they had this terrorist attack, which ISIS actually claimed that it did it. So I think besides these, usual agreements, both sides must be talking about what is going to happen to, the terrorist threats.
Thank you very much, Mr. Najm Saqib. Beg your pardon for the interjection. We are unfortunately short of time. Mr. Najm Saqib, former ambassador, joining us from South Africa on Skype. Really appreciate your time for being on Views on News, and we were honored to have been joined in the studio by Air Vice Marshal, retired Ijaz Malik, senior analyst, and Dr. Amna Mehmood, expert foreign affairs. Thank you very much for your time also, both of you. It was indeed an enlightening discussion, and that's all from today's Views on News. Until the next one, take good care of yourselves.